In my spare time, I'm a core member for DataMinds. For those who don't know DataMinds is the Belgian data user group focusing on the Microsoft data platform. Besides that, I do a bit of speaking and blogging as well. So in case you have any questions about the topics that I'm touching today, anything SQL, data, or BI related questions, feel free to reach out. You can contact me via the contact details at the slide in front of you. So via my personal blog, via email, via Twitter, via LinkedIn. If you would like to just reach out, I'm more than eager to assist where possible. Today, I'm going to take you on a journey that I've been experiencing in the past couple of years. So first I will set the scene, explain where I was, let's say 6 years ago, then how we were able to transition as a development team to work in a more flexible way. Then the main part of this session will go about how to get started. So it really will be a 101 session today about database projects and Azure DevOps. Near the end of the presentation, I will already give you a couple of pointers as well, what you can do afterwards. And to finalize today's presentation, I will give you an overview of benefits and at least one challenge where you will definitely be running into. Cool, let's keep things moving. So, a couple of years ago, I was working in a rather small development team, mainly consisting of 3 to 5 developers. And at that point in time, we were having 2 environments at our disposal, a development environment and a production environment. As a matter of process, we were keeping track of all changes manually. So every object we touched, every logic we changed, every configuration or parameter we added or adjusted was kept track of manually. Where, well, on a development ticket, in a Word file, in an Excel file. We tried email as well. Let's say that wasn't the best solution. It can get quite messy quite fast. As a matter of tools, we were mainly using SQL Server Management Studio, which of course is a very convenient way of working, but it has its own challenges as well. One of these challenges for us as a development team, for example, was moving big projects to production. What typically happened when we were allowed to move something to production was, well, we first need to find out, well, what has changed. So we need to find out which development tickets were involved. Then if we documented what has been changed on the development ticket, in the Word file, in the Excel file, in the email. So as you can hear, only trying to figure out what should be changed or what has been changed was already a quite extensive work. Then, as soon as we find out, we were able to prepare and create our migration scripts, upgrade scripts, and so on. Then, as soon as that was done, we were able to deploy. And let's say the preparation and deployment time was ready 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, maybe a day, maybe more, especially for big projects, of course. As soon as deployment was done, we fired up test launches. As soon as these test launches were finished, we could start bug fixing straight away. Why? Well, we were still missing objects, we were missing configuration, missing parameters, and so on. So as you can hear, preparation and deployment already really was a hassle. An ideal situation, which actually I would like to do, is being able to deploy or prepare and deploy, let's say in a matter of minutes, firing up test launches. And as soon as your test launches are done, you want to go out with your team and start celebrating your victory of moving that one project to production. In my case, it would definitely be with a decent glass of Belgian beer. Unfortunately, of course, at that point in time, we weren't able to. A second example is priority changes. As a developer, I'm struggling with priority changes all my professional career, especially in the first couple of years. So for this one, let's take this one from a business point of view. And let's say we are a beer manufacturing company and we only have one production line. And the development team is currently making changes to the production line, and they're already making changes for 2 weeks. And at that point in time, management runs into the office and is explaining, well, customer demand for draft beer is rising and we need to act now. Unfortunately, at that point in time, as a development team, we needed to disappoint management since, well, we were already making changes to the production line for the Leffe triple bottles. And before we could start with the changes for the draft beer, we still required 2 more weeks to finalize our changes. And at that point in time, we didn't have any way to go back to the status that we had before we started to make the changes. So there really is room for improvement here. A third example is unwanted changes in production. A couple of years ago, when I was working in that small development team, we were allowed to take a look at quick wins in the morning. So let's say a quick win is development of 30-ish minutes. We were allowed to execute the development in the morning, validating ourselves by noon, and in the afternoon or evening, well, we were already deploying these kind of changes to our production environment. Unfortunately, what typically happened was, well, we were deploying way too much to production. So instead of pushing the changes for the draft beer, we're already pushing our brand new beer into our production environment, which of course is a shame. The development wasn't finished yet. We didn't do any validation, so we were only delivering a mediocre product to our end users, which of course shouldn't be the goal. The last use case is code went missing. A couple of years ago in that same development team, well, we were required to use a certain, well, let's call it bug fixing strategy, which we called production first. So we were required to execute our bug fixes in the production environment first, before copying them back to development environment, just because we were required to minimize day-to-day business impact on our reporting environment. Of course, during next deployments, we were, of course, first of all, well, forgetting to copy our code back to development environment, and during future deployments, well, we were overriding our existing bug fixes. So we were delivering empty bottles of beer without liquid gold inside, without our already built knowledge inside, which of course is a shame. So as you can hear from all these examples, there really is room for improvement. So if we need to summarize what goes wrong, well, first of all, as a development team, we were failing because of human mistake. And we were forgetting to document properly. We didn't copy code back to the development environment, and so on. Then, I know I didn't really mention it explicitly during these use cases, but as a development team, we were failing on team communication as well. Why? Well, if we were properly communicating, even within our own team of 3 to 5 persons, everybody could have been aware that a change or a bug fix was made into the production environment, and at least had the reflex to take a look if it was copied to the development environment as well before deploying anything. But unfortunately, at that point in time, of course, we didn't. And then, where we're here for today, code management. If there was a proper code management system in place, then we could have overcome, let's say, 90% of these issues, not to say all. So now it really is time to take a look at the future. So what are we going to do? Well, first of all, I would advise you to get a third environment in place, which we will call the acceptance environment for today. Now, most important question, where are we going to use this environment for? Well, first of all, I want to use this environment for deployment testing. That's one. And to be fair, the most important reason why I want to have a third environment is to get business involved in an earlier stage than production. I want to be able to give the business users a certain feeling of ownership of the changes as well. So they really need to validate on the acceptance environment before we move anything to production. Then, as a matter of process, we are going to introduce automatic change tracking. Well, why automatic? Well, we will require to use a certain set of tools. The first tool that we're going to introduce is Git. Git is a file-based comparison system. Then we're going to introduce Azure DevOps as well. Azure DevOps, and for today mainly where we'll be focusing on repos, will be the location where we are going to save our source code of our database. Then our main tool for development will transition from Management Studio to Visual Studio. This will be a quite big step and a quite big change as well. Now, if you want to, you can use Azure Data Studio as well. But for today, during the demos as well, I will be only showing you the way how to work with Visual Studio. Then, I still kept SQL Server Management Studio as a tool as well. Why? Well, you would still be able to use it, but more from a validation point of view. Or if you, for example, really like to work in Management Studio, you can still use it to, well, get your scripts prepared as well. Oh, if we now take a look at database projects. Well, what is a database project? Well, a database project allows us to execute more project-oriented database development. If we now take a look at the left-hand side of the screen, that one, we can see a screenshot of Management Studio. And if we take a look at the folder structure, well, we can see tables, views, stored procedures, functions, and so on. Now, if we take a look at the right-hand side of the screen, right there, we can see an example database project with, well, more or less the same folder structure. So I can see functions, I can see stored procedures, tables, views, and so on. The key takeaway right here is, well, the folder structure in your database project is your own responsibility. So you can do whatever you want. You can go wild, you can go crazy if you want to. Just make sure that the folder structure in your database project is clear for your development team and for yourself. Now, what is important to mention about database projects as well? Well, first of all, a really important one, don't ever use database names and scripts. The reason why? Well, a couple of years ago, I was working for a company where they really liked to have the environment name in their database name. So database name _ development, database name _ acceptance, _ pre-production. And you know what? For production, just leave the suffix behind. So if you're using hard-coded database names in your scripts, well, you won't be able to deploy your code from environment to environment. So just leave it out. If you ever need to refer to an external table, an external database, for example, you still can, but you will need to make use of SQL command variables. You don't need to remind the term for me today. Just know there is a way to do so. Then there's something to mention about indexes as well. There are actually two different things that you can do with indexes in your database project. You can say, well, I really want to include them to have all my code at one place, or you say, I don't want to. Both options are fine. Just know, in case you do include your indexes in your database project, this will increase your deployment time as well. The reason why is, well, if you're changing a table, for example, and let's say a column, it will first drop all indexes, recreate the table, and then recreate all indexes. So your deployment time will be increasing. Then the last thing I would like to mention about database projects are publishing profiles. A publishing profile is an XML file where you can store deployment properties into. For example, where do you want to deploy to? What do you want to do with database properties? The reason why I'm explicitly saying this one is, well, I will be showing you an example during the demo why you don't want to deploy database properties, for example. I do have a specific use case for this one. Then what do you want to do if there might be data loss is an important one as well. And then if you don't include your indexes in your database project, you will definitely need to take a look at the advanced publish settings as well in the end. I will come back to that one later on during the demo. Now, Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps mainly consists of 5 default services. First one is Azure DevOps repos, where we will be focusing on today. This is actually will be the location where we are going to save our source code for our database. Then just know, in case you don't have a development ticketing system yet, it might be interesting to take a look at Azure DevOps boards. And if you're thinking about database deployment automation afterwards, it might be interesting to take a look at Azure DevOps pipelines as well. Now, if you take a more closer look to Azure DevOps repos and for today the Git way of working, then it is important to know that Git is a distributed version control system. And if you're working with Git, you will hear a lot about branching as well. Branching actually is nothing more or nothing less than creating a copy of existing code. That's branching. Then I just summarized the most important commands when working with Git. Well, the first one is pull, to get all the code-based changes from your remote to your local machine. Then push or commit and push, to get your change that you're making on your local machine committed to your repository and pushed to the remote, that your colleagues can continue working if you might be absent, for example. And then merging, well, it's actually nothing more or nothing less than combining 2 branches back as one. I just know I did forget to mention something. When we're talking about distributed version control systems, It actually is really important to understand that, well, why distributed? Well, when you're working with Git, every single developer will be working on a local version of the code. That's really important to understand. I will be showing you this one during the demo as well. Today, I am going to introduce you to a certain branching strategy. So today I'm going to introduce you to branching per feature or feature branching. Some people like to call it trunk-based development, but yeah, what's in the name? So branching per feature. What are the key takeaways right here? Well, first of all, we will always have a main branch, or often called master branch as well. This branch should always contain the production version of the code. No exceptions made. Then what I'm going to do is, well, I will be creating a development branch as well. This branch will include all my code that should be on the development environment. And then actually the most important part for branching per feature as well, we are going to create a feature branch for every single feature we would like to develop. Important to notice here is, well, we are going to base the feature branch on the main branch. The reason why is, well, we want to be flexible for our business users. So we are always starting our feature branches based on the main branch. This will improve flexibility for business as well. Then we're going to execute development on our feature branch. As soon as development is done, we're going to commit and push it to the remote to make sure our colleagues can continue working on our changes. Then we are going to merge our feature branch into our development branch and deploy our development branch to our development environment. As soon as deployment is done, we can execute validation on our development environment. And then, well, if you need to make adjustments, it is important to make your adjustments on the feature branch and not on the development branch directly. That's really important. Then, if everything is fine, well, we're going to merge our feature branch to our main branch in the end. Now, what are the biggest challenges concerning source control? Well, first of all, merge conflicts, especially if you're as patient as I am on a SQL project file. Mainly if you're using third-party vendor tools, but you will definitely run into issues with the SQL project file. I have no clue why, but this is always the one file that is giving me some concerns, but it is quite easy to solve in the end as well. Then it needs to become a habit to pull in all the changes from your development branch, for example, before you execute a merge from your feature branch to your development branch. So it really needs to become a habit. Then there is something important to tell about branch maintenance as well. For every single branch you're creating, so if you're developing 100 features a year and you're using a manual merging strategy, then you will need to remove 100 branches as well at the end of the year, as soon as they're deployed. To get this resolved, I will show you a trick near the end of the demo as well. And then, to be fair, the biggest challenge of them all, people. Everybody needs to be working in the same way or source control won't work. It really is as easy as that. I have been talking a lot theoretically, and I know it's really hard to follow along in a theoretical session. So let's do what I like to do the most, is getting practical. So let's take a look. So what did I do? I've opened up Visual Studio. If you take a look right here, yeah, I have created a blank solution, Fabric Denmark. And in that solution, I already created one blank database project called AdventureWorks LT. This is a database project which I will be using later on in the demo. But first, I actually want to show you how to create a brand new database project based on an existing database. So if we now take a look at, and I'm going to prepare, there we go. If we take a look at the left-hand side of the screen, there we go. I've opened up the SQL Server Object Explorer, and I'm connected to my local instance of SQL 2019. Right there, I have a couple of databases, but for today, I will be using the AdventureWorks Data Warehouse database and the AdventureWorks LT system, so the OLTP system for AdventureWorks. During the first demo, I would like to show you how to create a brand new database project based on the AdventureWorks Data Warehouse database. So what do we need to do? Well, first of all, we just need to right click on the database and say create new project. That's the first step. Not too hard, right? Then next step is, well, we need to give our project a name. So in my case, AdventureWorks Data Warehouse. And then I need to specify the location where I want to save my database project. In my case, of course, it will be already, there we go, in my created solution folder and select, there we go. Then there are a couple of import settings as well. To be fair, I won't be bothering too much about them today. The one that I want to point out is this one, the folder structure. If you really enjoyed the folder structure as shown in Management Studio, then I would advise you to use the object type folder structure. It isn't completely the same, but it's the most familiar to what you have compared to Management Studio. So for today, I will be choosing the object type folder structure, and I will just hit start. What Visual Studio is now going to do is, well, it's first going to create a blank project, and then it's going to import all non-existing objects into the new project. While Visual Studio is doing all the hard work, I'm going to show you something else. So I just opened up a blank screen of Visual Studio, and I want to show you how you can find out if you can get started with database projects. So if we just navigate to the left top corner and we go to Tools. Oh, what has been changed? Get Tools and Features. Wow. It is Get Tools and Features. Just caught by surprise. This is opening up the Visual Studio installer. And this might take a while. There we go. If we go to the right, we need to look for data storage and processing. And then we need to find out if SQL Server Data Tools is installed. If you don't have SQL Server Data Tools installed, you won't be able to create database projects. So if you don't have the option on the right, just scroll down in the Visual Studio installer until you find other tool sets, data storage and processing, mark it and install it. And then you should be good to go. In the meanwhile, Visual Studio should have completed all the hard work. There we go. And if we take a quick look, well, it finished importing the database and it even created a log file. To be fair, I never bothered to take a look at the log file before. So as long as it is working, it's working. So I just hit finish and there we go. We have our very first database project. Now let's do a quick validation. So AdventureWorks Data Warehouse views and the same in my database project. And as you can see, we have 5 views in our existing database, and we have got 5 in our database project as well. So it seems to be quite okay. That's one. That's the first step, the most easy one. There's just importing full database into a blank project or into a database project. Now I want to go through a specific use case. And for this one, I'm going to use the AdventureWorks LT system. Let me quickly get there. Oh, there we go. So I've been in a situation in the past where the OLTP system was a third-party vendor-owned database, where we don't have any rights, and we just had an agreement with the third-party vendor that we were allowed to create and maintain certain objects in the database. So for today, let's say the per-category view is that one object that we are allowed to maintain on that database. How are we going to handle to get this one into a database project? Well, we can't use the create database project functionality since we would be importing everything. We can't use the database compare functionality since it will require to import all dependent objects as well. So for what are we going to do? Well, if I navigate to the right to the Solution Explorer, I'm going to create a folder, which will be my views folder. There we go. Views. And the only thing I'm now going to do is, well, I'm going to drag and drop my view into my views folder. And there we go. So if we now take a look at our view, I do see some errors. So let's take a look. Go. So what is happening? Well, the view has an unresolved reference to schema. it has an unresolved reference to object, has an unresolved reference to, well, I think you get the point, right? So since we're not importing dependent objects of this view, we're getting these kind of errors. But of course, we don't want to import them since they're owned by the third-party vendor. So how are we going to handle this, since we still want to be able to deploy our changes in an easy way? Well, it will be a multi-step process. So first things first, let's get rid of the errors. So we're going to right-click on our view per category, going to Properties. And then we are going to take a look at the build action. This one is quite important. So what is the build action? By default, every single file in the database project gets the build action. This means, well, you need to include this file in the default build and deployment process, if there are changes, of course. Then you have the complete opposite, which is none, which is explaining the system, well, just ignore this file. I don't care. It just needs to be deployed. So for now, and this might be looking a bit strange, let's choose none. There we go. Now, this is step one. As you can see at the bottom, we don't have any issues left. Victory. Well, not really, since we won't be able to deploy at this point in time. But no worries, we're going to introduce something new. Let's go to Add New Item, and let's search for Post. I'm going to introduce you to a post deployment script. There we go. Just quickly give it the name, and there we go. So what is a post deployment script? Well, it's already explaining. Well, this file contains SQL statements that will be appended to the build script. The keyword here is this one, appended. Please keep this one in mind. Then it's just explaining, well, you can use this kind of syntax to include the file. So let's try. Our double point, use view product category.sql. And now we are good to go. Well, almost. What we have done right now, and for this, of course, you need to understand how the build and deployment process works. During every single build and deployment, during every single build and of course the deployment in the end, it will generate the script, and everything that has the build action will be included in the script, and if there are changes, it will be included in the change script as well. This file is just going to say, well, as soon as you have created the change script, include all these files or these kind of code structures, doesn't really matter, just include them as they are. So if we take a look back to our view, we're always saying create view. So the first time if this is a brand new view, it will be okay. From the second deployment onwards, this will be going wrong. So we just need to assist Visual Studio a bit. We can say, well, create or alter view, that's one. Or we can say drop view if exists. There we go. And then it is important to add a go as well. Otherwise, it won't work. So now we are good to go. And this also is a time that we can be really proud of ourselves. We actually create our very first version of our database projects. And now it is time to make sure that our colleagues can benefit from the great work that we have been doing. So let's take a look at Azure DevOps. So I have opened up Azure DevOps. There we go. Yeah, should be quite okay. And I've created a project, Fabric Denmark, for today. And I'm first going to create a brand new repository. So I'm going to repos. And then I'm going to say new repository. I need to choose the Git repository type for today. And I'm just going to name it Fabric Denmark. I won't be including a README for now, and I'm just going to create my repository. The only thing I need to do right now is I just need to copy the URL and go back to Visual Studio. So there we go. And if you take a look at the right bottom corner, Visual Studio was already pointing out, well, it might be a good idea to get your solution to version control. So let's follow the advice, Git. And there we go. So what did I do? I opened up, well, the window, of course. I went to existing remote. Then it was already smart enough to say, well, it is your solution is in this folder on your local machine. And then I just paste the URL from Azure DevOps into the remote URL section. This is how you can do it with Visual Studio 2019. If you're choosing for Visual Studio 2022, it gets way easier because you're going to get an additional option for Azure DevOps. Would be more useful. There we go. And now I just need to say create and push. Yes, I want to save. And what it's doing right now is, well, it's first going to initiate the local Git repository. Then it's going to create a link between the local repository and the remote repository and Azure DevOps. And as soon as that link has been created, it will push all my changes to the remote as well. And as we can see in the right bottom corner, well, I'm currently looking at my Fabric Denmark repository, and I'm looking at the master branch. Don't be mistaken, this is on my local machine. Now, if we take a look at Azure DevOps, and I'm just going to hit refresh, there we go. We can see, well, I have my files, and they were just changed just now. So this is the time to start celebrating, and our colleagues can benefit from the work that we've been doing. So now it is time to get to development. So what are we going to do? We're going back to Visual Studio, and we're going to navigate to the right bottom corner. Let me tell you, if you're using Visual Studio as your main tool for development, the right bottom corner will be your favorite one. You will spending quite some time there. So it's time to create our very first feature branch. So I'm just going to, I clicked on master, I'm going to say new branch. And then I'm just going to say, well, what's the branch name? Well, I always like to start with feature if it's a feature, and then my ticket number, BI1, for example, or data warehouse 1, doesn't really matter. If it's a bug fix, for example, I will start with, without typos, of course, bug fix. The reason why I'm doing this is, well, if you have a pretty large team and you're working on 10 or 20 or maybe 50 features at the same point in time, then this, everything before the slash will act as some kind of folder structure in Azure DevOps, which can become really handy if you're looking for a specific branch, a bug fix branch, or a feature branch, for example. So
Olivier, there is a question from the chat from Anders who asked, can you use VS Code for database projects?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yes.
I'm not sure. Actually, I heard rumors about it, but I never tried it actually myself. So
I know that there are extensions to VS Code to where you can work with database projects and build DAG packs and all this stuff. But how the extension actually works and how it builds the stuff is for me still to know. But I do know that one of our fellow MVPs, Andy Cutler, is working with it, and also Kevin Chant.
Yeah. Exactly.
So Anders, perhaps you should find those two guys on LinkedIn and then figure it out. I know that Andy just wrote a few blog posts about this a few weeks ago. So
yeah, exactly. Well, if you want to, I can find it out as well. It doesn't take that much time, so
yeah,
it isn't.
But let me find the profiles for Andy Cutler so you can find him.
Yeah. Now, so I will be. Oh, there's. Yeah, a package. It's available for Visual Studio Code as well. Okay, cool. Thanks, Felipe. So I was creating my very first branch. So it will be my feature branch BI ticket number 1. Then we need to assign on which branch we would like to base our branch on. So we can say master. Yeah, it would be fine. Well, since I'm choosing local master, I prefer to go to the remotes and say origin master. This makes sure that I will get the most recent version of my production branch. So in this case, it's called my master branch instead of main branch, but they're basically the same. And then I'm just going to say create branch. There we go. And as you can see in the right bottom corner, I'm now ready to execute my development since I'm connected to my feature BI branch 1. Important to know, at this point in time, this feature branch is only available on my local machine. That's really important. So if I would go to Azure DevOps, going to hit refresh and go to branches, all. It isn't here yet. It will only become available as soon as I push all my changes to the remote. Now, it is time to do some development. So let's get my per category view again. And for today, I will be executing the most hard development. As you can see, I will be incrementing my per category description 2 for today. And there we go, development done. Now, we were talking about automatic change tracking. If we take a look at the right bottom corner, we can see that Visual Studio or Git actually has identified one change. So if we take a look, we can see a change was identified on my view per category file. So I'm just going to stage the change to get it to the remote, of course. And then I need to enter a message. What I'm always doing right here is, well, I am repeating my ticket number. And then you actually need to write why you are changing something. And please make it a meaningful message. I was in a session on Bits this year, and there was a presenter talking about making commits in Git, and he was talking about, well, if you're just getting started, well, it might be useful just to start with the word because. This will enforce you to explain why you are making a change. So, well, I don't really use it, but I'm going to explain what I did. So I added a column to show how easy it can be to work with database projects and Azure DevOps. And actually, I should mention for demo purposes as well. There we go. So it is clear why I did this. Now, to get our change to remote, I just need to go to commit stage that push. And there we go. So it's first create the commit locally, and now it's pushing it to remote as well. So in a couple of seconds, as soon as the push has succeeded, there we go. We can go to our Azure DevOps environment, hit refresh. And if we go to files, well, I can't see my changes. It was 7 minutes ago. Well, this is something really stupid, but important to know. Make sure you're looking at the right branch. I was looking at my master branch, as you can see right here at the left top corner. If I'm changing to my feature branch, now I can see, well, last change just now. There you go. We have execute development, and now it is time to get our development branch in place as well. So for this one, I'm just going to create my development branch in Azure DevOps. So I'm just going to choose new branch development based on, well, master for today, create, and there we go. Now we are going to execute the merge in Visual Studio. So I'm going back to Visual Studio. I'm going to the right bottom corner again, my feature BI1 branch. I'm going to click it and go to remote. Since we didn't copy the development branch locally yet, I'm just going to say, well, remote seems to be the logical place. And what do we see? Well, we don't have the development branch available. Well, there is an obvious reason. I did mention 3 important Git commands. Actually, there are 4. So the command that we're missing currently is fetching, is the fetch command. This command will get branch-based changes. And so if you add branches to the remote, if you remove branches to the remote, these kind of changes is what you can get to the local machine by using the fetch command. So if we use the fetch command, there we go. Let me quickly see if we go to remote. There we go. We have our development branch available. So we just click the development branch to check it out. There we go. As you can see, I still had my view per category open, and the line that I uncommented in my feature branch is still commented. So now let's execute our manual merge. To get this done, I'm going to the right bottom corner once more, click on my development branch, navigate to my feature branch, right click, and say, well, merge into current branch. Now Visual Studio is saying, well, are you sure? Well, yes, please. For today, I really am. And there we go. Now it is uncommented. and Visual Studio or Git has identified that there is one outgoing change, as you can see in the right top corner. So we just push the change away to make sure that our merge becomes available at remote as well. There we go. And now it is time to deploy our changes to our development environment. To get this done, we're going to navigate to the Solution Explorer. We're going to right-click on our database project, and we're going to say Publish. What Visual Studio is now doing is, well, it's first going to execute the build phase. We're just going to do some checks if everything is, or there are certain checks to validate if a couple of things are right. And then in the end, it's generating 3 different files. The most important one is the DACPAC file. This will be used for deployment in the end as well. Now, important to know, just a fun thing to know, if you ever want to find out what's included in the DACPAC file, you can just, well, replace the .DACPAC extension with .zip, extract all, take a look inside. That's what you can do with it. Might be fun for once. Now, as soon as the build process has finished successfully, it will open up the published database window. And now I just need to, well, first of all, say where I want to deploy to. In my case, my local instance of SQL 2019, of course. And then I'm going to the advanced section right here. Yeah. And right here in the advanced publish settings, we already see what I was mentioning during one of the slides as well. What do you want to do with database properties? Do you really want to deploy them? In this case, I don't want to, since I'm deploying to a third-party vendor system. So I will be unmarking this one. There we go. Now, the next one, block incremental deployment if data loss might occur. Well, this has been a lifesaver for me a couple of times. Just know if you, for some reason, need to remove a column from your database, I have no clue why you would want to, but if you need to, you will need to unmark this one, or your deployment will fail. Then, so I'm just going to leave it marked as it was. Now I'm going to the drop section as well, since here are some really importance as well. Exactly these 4, and mainly for the case with the indexes that I mentioned, the last one. Drop indexes not in source. If you're excluding your indexes from your database project, make sure to unmark this one. Otherwise, you will have a fun day at work. Been there, done that a couple of times. So, just important, just unmark these ones.
That's more or less like deleting a table in production, more or less. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, been there, done that a couple of times, unfortunately.
Exactly.
That was exactly before, so I just confirmed my settings, and that was exactly before the time that I figured out publishing profiles. So we made the configuration. I'm just going to say save profile as, and now I can just give my publishing profile a name, AdventureWorks LT_development for today. There we go. And before I am executing my deployment, I want to show you something else. So I created a publishing profile, which is an XML file, as I mentioned before. And as you can see, where's my mouse right here? Well, what do you want to do if there might be data loss? What do you want to do with indexes which are not in your source? Do you want to drop them? No. You can already pre-configure it. The useful thing about publishing profiles, if I just double-click my publishing profile, it will launch the build process. And then it will already, as soon as the build process has completed, it launches the published database window with all values pre-configured, as done in the publishing profile. And now I can just say, well, publish. And this might take a while. Sometimes it takes 1 second, sometimes it takes around 10 seconds, maybe more. So now we really need to play the waiting game. We are currently deploying to our development environment. And for today, it really takes, 15 seconds for today. Okay. So if we take a closer look, what happened? We said, well, publish to my local database. It created a publishing preview. It created a database script. It executed the publish script on my development database. And it completed the publish successfully, all that in 15 seconds of deployment time. And of course, we had, well, a couple of minutes for developing, merging, and deploying. So we went from an hour, maybe more, maybe a day, to a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes. So this really is a time saver, and this is the biggest benefit that I have from working with database projects, for example. It really is a time saver, and I really gained a lot of time over the years with it. And now you'd say, well, yes, I understand, but we only made one tiny change. I can tell you I'm currently working with a lot bigger databases, a lot bigger tables, structures as well. And even then, if we're making a lot bigger changes, it still takes a couple of minutes. So going from preparation and deployment from hours or even days to minutes is worth it. At this point in time, I'm arguing with a colleague that our deployments are already taking 5 minutes. And then we're always laughing in the end, since we knew where we came from. So this really is amazing, and it's really useful, by the way. Now, that aside, what I want to show you as well is if I now, for example, right-click. Oh, I will first answer a question maybe. Do you have any tips for avoiding losing data if you rename a column? Well, if you're deploying and you have that one mark enabled, you won't be able to deploy. It will just stop deployment.
But I guess if you have a change in a column name, you could do a post-deployment script to copy that data to a temporal to a temporary table, and then after deployment, you could copy it back in a post-deployment script to copy it back to the new created table, and then you're good to go. But you have to handle that manually in order not to have data loss, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you would just be changing the type, for example, then it will automatically drop all indexes, recreating the table and populate it as well. But with a rename, I'm not very sure. So then it might be that you really need to create a new column, then handling your copying of the data to the new column in a post-deployment script, and in that way, might be
or if you are really keen on making that name change, you could just create that as a pre-deployment script as a alter table, alter column to a new column name, and then the deployment would just go fine afterwards. So exactly. But you have to handle it manually.
Yeah, exactly. What I was going to show, if I just right-click now on my per category file, I'm going to get view history. This is a screen of Visual Studio which I really love. So if you take a look, it is showing the history of the file. So I can tell you who made a change, when a change was made, why the change was made, and if I'm going to the right, where the change is at this point in time. On top of that, if I'm just selecting both commits, I'm saying, well, compare them, I can see what has been changed as well. So this really is a powerful functionality in Visual Studio. I'm using this all the time. Just to know to which developer I need to go to ask additional questions. That being said, now something else in Azure DevOps. As mentioned before, there is something concerning branch maintenance as well. So let's say our development was validated properly, and we're allowed to move it to production. Then we already know as soon as it's deployed to production, we will require to execute branch maintenance and remove our branch in the end. To avoid this, you can use an alternative to a manual merge, which is called a pull request. So if you go to repos on the left-hand side, and we choose pull requests right here, we can actually say, well, you know what, create a new pull request, and I want to create a pull request for my new feature into my master, as you give it a title, a description, and you can say, well, required reviewers, and for today I'm a one-man team, so I will be assigning the reviewer task to myself. And by doing this, well, you're actually already introducing peer reviewing as well, which will improve your development quality as well in the end. So I'm the required reviewer, I say create. Now it's already validating if there might be a merge conflict, which luckily there isn't for today. Let's go to files, and we can see, well, there is one change or one file changed. What has been changed? Well, okay. Per category description 2 has been uncommented in the file. This change seems to be quite okay. So in the right top corner, I'm going to say approve and then complete. And then I actually want to show you this one. If you're using pull requests, you can make sure that your branches get deleted automatically after you executed a merge, or after you completely finished your pull request, of course. So if we choose complete merge, then Azure DevOps is going to handle the merge process. And as soon as this is done, there we go, we can see completed. And if we now, and normally now it would be the moment to deploy your changes to production as well. But yeah, for today, I only have one environment, so it would be a bit silly. But if we go to branches, I'm going to all, you can see that my feature branch, which was here before, isn't there anymore. So the branch maintenance has happened automatically as well. Cool. That's everything that I want to show you during the demo. So let's head back to the presentation for the final slides. If it wants to. Yeah, there we go. So moving forward. Today, I have been showing you how to set up a database project in two different ways, one for a full database and one for only a subsection of a database. Then I've been showing you how to create a repository in Azure DevOps as well. We have been talking about branching a bit briefly maybe, but yeah, we only have 1 hour more or less, of course. But I've been showing you how to work with different branches as well. And I've showed you the branching technique that I'm using, which is branching per feature. And I've shown you briefly in the end how to work with pull requests as well. Now, further steps which you could take are, well, first of all, doesn't really matter in which order, but the two things that come in mind for me personally is, first of all, test automation. If you're interested in test automation, it might be interesting to take a look at T-SQL-T, which is the T-SQL unit testing framework. And then, of course, deployment automation. Why deployment automation? Well, even when you, in my case, I saved a lot of time and went from deployments which took a day or more, or yeah, a couple of hours, let's say, to a couple of minutes. But even if you need to, well, maintain, in my case, a couple of months ago, 6 environments, yeah, 5 minutes for each environment still is 30 minutes of deployment. So if you want to, well, reduce that time as well, it might be interesting to take a look at deployment automation, for example. In my case, at this point in time, I'm able to, well, deploy to my development environment just with automatically without doing anything, and to my production environment with exactly 2 clicks of a button, create, release, and deploy. So it's quite useful. I only spent a couple of seconds to hit that 2 buttons and it's done. Then benefits and challenges. So as mentioned, and I really hope I was able to show you how easy it can be to set up database projects and Azure DevOps at the first place. Then that you will have a clear changelog as well. You will finally know what has been changed, why has it been changed, by whom, when, and so on. Then I really hope this illustrated what it will do with your efficiency of deploying us as well. It really can be a time saver. Then, if you're working with pull requests, it will immediately improving your development quality as well, meaning that you will need to execute less bug fixes in the end as well. Then, the biggest challenge where you will run into is changing habits. That will be the most challenging part. Everybody needs to be working the same way, or database projects and Azure DevOps won't work. It really is as easy as that. That being said, my name is Olivier van Steenland. Thank you very much for attending at this beautiful summer evening. In case you have any feedback about the session, I have my own feedback form as well. So please feel free to leave feedback, positive, negative, doesn't really matter. It just helps me to grow as a speaker. If you want to have the slides, I have them available on my GitHub account as well. And of course, if you have questions after today, just feel free to reach out. Thank you very much, and I really hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Are there any questions left?
Thank you, Olivier. Thank you for the session. I learned a few things about these DevOps projects because DevOps is not my friend right now. So perhaps it will be in the future. I see that we have some thank you comments here, and Anders is also typing. Let's see what he's saying. Well, I would thank you for using an hour, all of you, for using an hour in our company here, and thank you, Olivier, for the presentation and for your time. I really enjoyed it. I hope you all, the attendees, did too. And if we don't have any other questions, I will wish you a very, very great summer, all of you, and I hope to see you again in beginning of August with a brand new session with